8 patient dogs, 6 huskies, a Samoyed, and a northern Inuit opened their circle, letting the spotted newcomer curl up on their bellies, nibble at their ears, and boldly steal mouthfuls meant for them. Meanwhile, Sage, the elderly northern Inuit dog with arthritis, who understood pain in ways that transcended species, tucked him under her care like a seasoned grandmother who knew the shape of storms and how to outlast them. In a world where predator and prey exist by ancient laws, where wild hearts are meant to belong to the wilderness, how could a fierce bobcat like Orion end up sleeping peacefully beside huskies? This is the story of an impossible family that crossed every boundary of species. Before we begin, don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe, and ring the notification bell so you won't miss any of our unexpected stories. The call came on a Tuesday morning in March, when the Montana sky was still wavering between winter and spring. Laura Bennett was scrubbing out water bowls in her rescue facility when the phone buzzed against the cold metal counter. The voice on the other end belonged to a sheriff's deputy from a county 3 counties away. "Ma'am, we've got a situation. We just shut down an illegal fur farm. There's a bobcat kitten, no more than 8 weeks old. Animal control says if we can't find placement by the end of the day, it'll have to be put down." Laura's hands froze on the dish rag. After 23 years as a licensed wildlife rehabilitator, she knew well. Some calls could change everything, and this was one of them. The drive took nearly 4 hours, through melting snow and slick, muddy roads. Laura's old pickup truck, loaded with carriers and emergency supplies, groaned its way up the final hill. What spread out before her was a scene that would haunt her for months to come. Row after row of wire cages, most now empty. And yet the stench, the fear, the waste, and the despair still hung thick in the air, heavy as a choking fog. The deputy, a young man named Daniel Reyes, led Laura to a wire cage in the far corner of the warehouse. Inside, pressed tight against the cold mesh, was a tiny bundle of spotted fur no bigger than a cantaloupe. Its amber eyes were wide with terror, the small body trembling so violently that the spots on its coat seemed to blur in fear. "They were breeding them for pelts," Daniel said quietly, his voice low with anger. "Its mother didn't make it. We found it lying beside her body yesterday." Laura slowly knelt down, lowering herself to appear less threatening. In more than 20 years working with hundreds of wild animals, she had witnessed her share of heartbreak. But the way humans turned a free creature into a commodity, this deliberate cruelty never became easier to bear. She quietly opened the carrier and set it at the cage door, then sat back to wait. Patience was always the first rule of rescue. Time dragged heavily. Every minute, every second, the kitten's tense breathing echoed in the air. It took 40 minutes. 40 minutes of soft humming, scattering bits of food, pretending to look away while still watching from the corner of her eye. At last, hunger overcame fear. The kitten crept forward, snatched a piece of rabbit meat, and retreated. Then, again. On the 3rd try, Laura gently guided him into the carrier with a gloved hand. "You're safe now, little warrior," she whispered, sliding the latch shut. The answering growl, tiny but fierce, was so intense it nearly made her smile. "Let's get you home." The first challenge came immediately. Back on her sprawling property over 40 acres of Montana wilderness, with a log house at its center, Laura was forced to face a decision. Her rehabilitation facility was already full. She was caring for 2 orphaned black bears preparing for release into the wild. By protocol, the new arrivals should be kept in strict isolation, with minimal human contact, and begin training for an eventual return to the wild. But when Laura met the gaze of this tiny being just weaned, still carrying the weight of deep trauma, she knew this time the rules on paper would not be enough. "Sometimes," Laura whispered to the kitten as she prepared a bottle of specialized formula, "the rules need to bend a little. so that spirits don't break. That was when Sage found them. The northern Inuit dog with silver gray fur and eyes cold as winter ice. Laura's very first rescue, 15 years ago. Now, with age and arthritis slowing her steps, Sage remained the spiritual leader of the pack of 8 dogs on the ranch, ruling them with the patience and experience of a grandmother who had raised more litters of puppies than anyone could count. She padded into the wooden kitchen, glanced at the carrier, then lay down beside it with a low, warm woof. Instantly, the bobcat kitten Orion stopped crying. Laura sat in silence, astonished to see how Sage's presence seemed to soothe the fragile little creature. The old dog's silver tail swept slowly across the wooden floor, her breathing deep and steady, like an ancient lullaby. A moment later, a tiny spotted paw slipped through the bars, reaching toward that swishing gray tail. "Well then," Laura murmured with a gentle smile, her voice low and warm, "it looks like you've just found your first friend." She named him Orion, after the constellation in the night sky Laura loved most. A symbol of strength, of a warrior unbroken in the darkness, yet shining because of his steadfast heart. It was the perfect name for a creature born into shadow but destined to survive. Laura hoped it would be the beginning of something better. The introduction to the pack happened step by step, as carefully as a ritual. First came the other elder of the house, Atlas, Laura's massive Samoyed, his snow-white coat making him look like a gentle polar bear. Then the younger Huskies, Blitz and Bolt, twin brothers with identical black masks. Celine, pure white with one blue eye and one brown. Rogue, fiery red, headstrong. Onyx, quiet, eyes always watchful. And Jinx, the mischief maker who lived up to her troublesome name every single day. Laura had expected, at best, mere tolerance for Orion's arrival. But what she received instead was unexpected acceptance. Within a week, Orion was curled up fast asleep against Atlas's belly, as if he had found a warmer bed than any fire could offer. Blitz and Bolt took turns carrying him around the house by the scruff. So gentle it was, as if the 2 young men had suddenly become patient mothers. Celine cared for Orion with the devotion of a cat, her pink tongue carefully grooming his spotted ears, bit by bit. Even Jinx, who always stole everyone's toys and never shared her treats, surprised them all by dropping a strip of dried rabbit at Orion's feet, then sitting back to watch him eat with satisfaction. But it was Sage who became Orion's true guardian. The old dog seemed to understand pain in a way that crossed the boundaries of species. When nightmares made Orion cry out in his sleep, a sound that tore Laura's heart every time Sage would quietly curl around him. Her large, time-faded body became a living fortress against the dark memories. Sage taught him how to play, with the patient repetition of one who knew that joy, once lost, had to be learned again slowly. "You're breaking every rehabilitation rule in the book," veterinarian Dr. Michael Hartman told Laura during Orion's 12-week checkup. But he was smiling as he watched the bobcat kitten wrestle with Onyx's thick tail, while the quiet husky lowered his head and tilted an ear in a gentle invitation to play. "Some souls aren't meant to be wild," Laura replied, scratching behind Orion's tufted, spotted ears. "He was born in a cage. He was born in a cage. The wild has never known him, and he's never known the wild. But this..." Laura gestured to the chaotic yet harmonious scene of dogs and bobcat playing together. "This he understands." As spring gave way to summer, Orion grew at an unbelievable pace. His paws became comically large, promising the 40-pound frame he would one day reach. The spots on his coat grew sharper, and the tufts on his ears stood tall and proud. He learned how to open doors to Laura's frequent dismay, to steal food off the kitchen counters thanks to the dedicated instruction of the dogs, and to make a chirping sound like a bird, a rare sign of happiness that came most often when Sage appeared. The first time Orion met Jasper, Laura held her breath. Jasper was her oldest quarter horse, a bay with a white blaze down his face, as gentle in spirit as a saint. Laura led Orion to the barn with a rope, not to restrain him, but only as a safeguard in case things went badly. The Bobcat, now 6 months old and weighing nearly 30 pounds of muscle and curiosity, crept toward the stall, ears pricked forward. Jasper lowered his massive head. Orion sank back onto his haunches, amber eyes considering. Then, in a moment Laura would replay in her mind for years to come, the young Bobcat reached up and touched his nose to the horse's muzzle. Jasper snorted softly, his warm breath stirring the long whiskers on Orion's face. A strange, yet steadfast friendship was born in that instant. By fall, Orion had integrated so completely into Laura's unconventional family that any visitor had to blink twice. There was a Bobcat sharing a dog bed with 3 Huskies. That same Bobcat was carefully grooming the ears of Atlas, the massive Samoyed, while the big dog dozed like royalty under the tender care. And most remarkable of all, Orion shadowed Sage on her slow patrols around the property. His young legs patiently matched pace with the arthritic limp of the old dog. "He thinks he's a dog now," Daniel Reyes said, half joking, during a visit to check on the progress of the rescue. He watched Orion play tug-of-war with Rogue, the rope toy stretched between the teeth of predator and those of the domesticated. "No," Laura corrected gently, her voice firm. "He knows he's a Bobcat. He also knew he was part of the family." Winter swept down on Montana again with its familiar fury. Laura had once worried how Orion would endure it, but she needn't have. The dogs had taught him about snow, how to bound through deep drifts, how to dig warm tunnels, and how to find the coziest spots in the log house after exhausting play. On the coldest nights, she often found all 9 creatures piled together before the fireplace, like a living blanket of fur, breathing warmth and contentment. Then, on a February morning sparkling with fresh snow, the phone rang again. Same county, same situation. Authorities had uncovered another breeding facility, directly tied to the first. This time, they had rescued a female Bobcat kitten, about the same age Orion had been when he was found. "She's in bad shape," the new deputy warned. "Malnourished, infected eyes. The vet says she'll make it, but bring her here," Laura replied instantly, without a moment's hesitation. They named her Lyra, the liar, but to Laura, the name carried a softness and gentle resonance. When the little Bobcat finally uncurled from her defensive ball, her body was round, golden, and sweet as honeyed pastry. Unlike Orion's initial outbursts of fear, Lyra's trauma showed itself in complete withdrawal. She wouldn't eat unless left alone. She hid beneath furniture. She flinched at the slightest sound. Laura set up a separate room for her, this time following strict isolation protocol. But Orion had other ideas. On Lyra's 3rd night home, Laura heard scratching at the door of the isolation room. When she came closer, she found Orion sitting there, making soft chirping sounds, the ones he usually reserved for Sage, for family. Against her better judgment, Laura eased the door open. And what happened next challenged everything she thought she knew about Bobcat behavior. In the wild, they are solitary, fiercely territorial creatures. Yet Orion approached the cowering kitten with the same gentleness Sage had once shown him. He lay down a few feet away, letting out a low purr, an almost unheard of sound from him, and he waited. 3 long hours. 3 hours of patient presence before Lyra finally crept forward. When she finally reached him, Orion immediately began grooming her matted fur with infinite care. By morning, Laura stepped in to find the two curled together, Lyra tucked beneath Orion's chin as if she had always belonged there. "You know," Dr. Michael Hartman said during Lyra's first checkup, watching Orion stand protectively by her side, "your friend was right. You should have named her Lyra, Orion's destiny in the stars. Laura laughed, but the truth of the words echoed in her mind. Orion had found his purpose in protecting this small, wounded soul, just as Sage had once protected him. The pack's acceptance of Lyra was immediate and absolute, as if Orion's love for her was the only letter of recommendation they needed. But it was the old dog who worked the true magic. Sage, now 15 years old, moving slowly like winter honey, would lie beside Lyra for hours, silently proving that the world could be trusted to remain safe. Spring came again, bringing transformation. Lyra grew into her name, round, soft, golden in the sunlight she had learned to seek out. She discovered the joy of play through Jinx's patient teaching, learned to hunt toys from Onyx, and found her voice in harmonizing with the Husky's howls. She even forged her own friendship with Jasper, though what she loved most was perching on a fence post, chirping commentary while the old horse grazed in peace. The day Lyra first bounded into the snow, leaping with the clumsy joy of someone discovering happiness for the very first time, Laura cried. Daniel Reyes visited again, this time bringing his 12-year-old daughter, Chloe, who dreamed of becoming a veterinarian one day. "How come they don't eat each other?" Chloe asked bluntly, her wide eyes fixed on Lyra and Orion wrestling, while Blitz played the patient referee. Laura thought carefully before answering. "Love isn't limited by species, Chloe. Trauma isn't either. These animals, all of them, not just the bobcats, have learned that surviving isn't the same as living. And now, they're teaching one another how to do both." At that moment, Sage walked by, moving slowly but steadily. Orion immediately abandoned his game to walk beside her, and Lyra fell in step right behind. The three of them made their way to the warm patch of sunlight by the window, where the old dog gently lowered herself onto her worn bed. The two bobcats arranged themselves around her. Orion pressed against her back, while Lyra curled up by her belly. "She won't have much longer," Dr. Michael Hartman had told Laura privately last week. "Maybe a month, maybe 2. Laura knew, Sage knew, and somehow, she sensed that Orion and Lyra knew as well. They had become the old dog's most devoted attendants, rarely leaving her side except to eat. On Sage's final day, a gentle May morning, the entire pack gathered around her old bed. Laura sat on the floor, cradling the old dog's head in her lap, while 8 dogs and 2 bobcats formed a circle of warmth, silently bearing witness. Orion groomed Sage's ears one last time. Lyra let out a low, trembling purr, like a rusty engine, offering a strange kind of comfort. "You saved them," Laura whispered, meeting Sage's wise winter eyes. "You showed them how to trust again." Sage's silver tail gave a single, weak thump. Then she closed her eyes and let go, surrounded by the family she herself had helped create. They buried her beneath the big pine tree where Sage had loved to rest on summer days. Every animal was there, even Jasper and the other horses. Orion and Lyra kept vigil at her grave for 3 days, leaving only when Laura carried them back inside. At night, grief settled over the land like morning mist, but life, fierce, spiraling life, went on. Atlas stepped into the role of elder in Sage's place. The younger dogs learned to move more carefully around the quiet grief of the bobcats. And then, slowly, the wounds began to knit into memory. 6 months later, Laura received another call. Another fur farm. 2 more bobcat kittens. She looked out the window, where Orion and Lyra were sunbathing with the pack, a warm heap of fur, full of contentment and trust. Orion was grown now, a magnificent male weighing 42 pounds. Lyra, sleek and supple, weighed 30. They could have been wild creatures. They could have ended up as lifeless pelts on a rack. Instead, they were teachers now, showing other wounded souls that there was another way to live. A way with love, with trust. "Yes," Laura said into the phone, her voice firm. "Bring them here." That evening, as she prepared the isolation room, a familiar sound came at the door, the faint scratching of claws. Laura turned and found Orion and Lyra sitting there, letting out soft, gentle chirps. They knew. They understood. Those sounds were an invitation to the new souls in need of healing. "Sage taught you well," Laura whispered as she opened the door. And as the two bobcats padded inside to greet the newcomers, she thought about the wild, not as a place, but as a quality of spirit. These creatures would never hunt in Montana's forests or claim mountain territories, but they remained wild in their love, fierce in their loyalty, untamed in their capacity to heal and to be healed. Outside, the dogs raised their evening howl, voices rolling out beneath a sky painted pink and gold by the sunset. From the isolation room came answering chirps not only from the new kittens, but from Orion and Lyra as well, adding their voices to the family chorus. Laura smiled, remembering Sage's patient eyes and gentle lessons. The old dog was gone, but her legacy lived on in every creature here, those who had learned that love could be stronger than fear. That family could be chosen, not just born, that sometimes the greatest rescue was simply making space in your home and choosing again and again to love what the world had cast aside. The howls rose long as night fell. A wild song lifted from once tamed throats,